Well, hello. Today we're going to talk about the scoop on cabinet health. Before we get started, we just want you to know that this video is not sponsored by Cabinet or anybody else. We just wanted to share our experience with Cabinet since we saw this on Facebook and found the offering rather different and intriguing. So why cabinet health? Well, as we just mentioned, we saw it on Facebook and we were very curious about it because of the fact that they offered the refills in prescription labeled packets instead of bottles. We were looking for a solution to take our medications traveling, but without the bulk of the bottle. We know that lots of people successfully take medications every day in little Ziploc baggies, but we really didn't feel comfortable carrying them unlabeled because if your luggage is ever inspected, the customs agents don't know what those pills are, and you really don't want to be detained while they assess what it is and whether it's legal, etc., etc. We just don't have time for that. So by carrying labeled medications, we feel more comfortable. If you want to take them in a Ziploc baggie because nobody's ever checked, then that's great for you, but we would rather take them labeled. And as a final thought, Cabinet provides nice glass bottles, and they intend for you to take the labeled packets, refill the bottle, and in that way you don't have these plastic prescription bottles everywhere that have to be dealt with. So what was our experience with Cabinet? Basically, we asked them to transfer the prescription from Express Scripts, and we had heard that Express Scripts is not particularly cheap. We found it to be not particularly expensive, but that doesn't mean that other pharmacies can't be cheaper. After asking for it to be transferred, we waited about 2 or 3 weeks before we ever heard from Cabinet again. Our first package was the unlabeled bottle and a packet of the medication with all the prescription details, just as you would find on a standard prescription bottle. As a bonus, they also offered a small travel tin that would accept their personalized label and their version of generic Tylenol in one of their glass jars. Approximately a week later, we got the personalized metal label to stick to our previously unlabeled medication jar. It just sticks on there magnetically. So here were the good things about Cabinet. One, we really liked the labeled packet that we can take traveling. 90-day prescription can almost be flat in that packet, unlike a 3-dimensional pill jar. If you have a tiny home or you just have less space in your personal cabinets, these packets will really help you save space. So you can just forget the glass jar and keep your medications in the packet. We're happy to not have any more plastic bottles to have to dispose of. We admit that Cabinet did take care of the prescription transfer and there was no effort on our part. Instructions were provided on how to compost the packet in a brochure that came with the metal label that came approximately a week after the medication arrived. These jars stack very nicely and look good, almost like a set of little spice jars. So if you're really into organizing your stuff, these will be very satisfying. And just so you know, you can buy these little glass jars. I don't know how much they cost, but they are offered separately in case you become a fanatic. Now, what were the bad things that we found about Cabinet? One, the packets are not child-proof, and that should be rather obvious. It's going to be hard to child-proof a Ziploc packet. But the jars are child-proof and require you to push down and turn. That was not on the jar or any of the materials that we read. We just had to experiment and figure out how to open these things. Once you figure it out, it's really easy for an adult to open and close, and frankly, it's probably easy for precocious children to do it too. But at least they made the effort to make the jar childproof. The metal label, we had expected it to have all of the same information as the packet, but actually the metal label contains only the basic information, just your name, the prescriber, and the medication with some basic instructions. But we really wanted to see it have the description of the tablets so that if there was a question, then somebody could see what the tablets should have looked like and compare that to the actual tablets. So some people suggested that maybe you could use a Ziploc and put this label in there. We're not too sure about that since it doesn't have the description of the actual tablets. So we personally would feel better with the labeled packet, which does contain all of what we feel is the necessary information. The price is actually higher than Express Scripts for the medication itself, and the shipping cost, which is normally free with Express Scripts, was $10, which we thought was really high. Now, maybe they're actually charging for the cost to ship the, quote, free Tylenol and the jar and all that sort of stuff. So we paid it, but it's not something that we would want to pay on a regular basis. Also, they didn't offer the choice of the size of jar, and they do have smaller jars, but we got the tall one, and we think that the medication will actually only be about half of a tall jar for a 90-day prescription. So we're not really sure why they provided the tall jar versus the half jar that you would see in this photo here. But we were a little unhappy to get the tall jar. Also, from the side, you don't know what these tablets are. You really have to pick up the bottle and look at the label. We would have preferred that they provided a label for the lid that could be removed or some other means of labeling the side of the jar. However, it's not that big of a deal, and we will print out our own P-Touch label. Now, for Just a Thing, overall the experience was good. We thought the wait might have been a bit long, but they took care of everything, and it did arrive without us having to follow up. So we'll call that a thing. Also, Cabinet Health claims to work with Target, but it's unclear from their website whether you can get prescriptions filled in these labeled packets. So we think that Target may be a place where you can get maybe the jars, the over-the-counter medications in their jars, but it's unclear whether you can get the prescription medication from the Target pharmacy. Bottom line, we would definitely use Cabinet Health, but just to obtain the labeled packet. Then we're going to reuse that packet. Now, there is, quote, an expiration date on it, and so we're not sure if we really can travel with that packet beyond that expiration date, because, hey, if somebody wants to examine and claim that some of this stuff was possibly not legal, etc., they're probably going to check that date. So we should have a good 2 years of use with that packet. It probably will get dirty and scummy before then. So maybe you suck it up and you buy once every 2 years. That's not that big of a deal. We're not really sure we would use Cabinet Health as a regular pharmacy due to the higher cost of the medication and the high shipping fees. Now, we might reconsider using them more often if we could get those labeled packets from Target, because then we wouldn't be paying $10 for shipping. We don't really live near a Target, but certainly close enough to offset $10 worth of shipping. We definitely think that these labeled packets are a must for travel with controlled substances. We don't travel with controlled substances. However, for people who do, we really think it's important to be carrying the medication in labeled packets or a labeled jar. And certainly the packets are far more compact, even if you're just putting it in your purse. So that's what we would recommend. But like we said, we know of a lot of people who believe that you can just mix 5 or 6 different pills in a Ziploc and nobody will ever question them about it. And if that's the way you feel, go right ahead. But that's not the way we're going to travel. We just don't need that kind of trouble. Also, from a travel perspective, some countries are going to be more strict about how you carry your medications and whether they're prescribed or not. And also, certain travel itineraries to or from known drug countries will cause there to be more concern around what is in your bag. So, depending on where you're going and where you're coming from, this may be a higher or a lower risk. So to avoid any of the drama or confusion, we just think it's easier to carry your prescriptions in a labeled packet versus an unlabeled packet. And certainly carrying them in a jar or a container is just going to take up excessive space that is totally unnecessary. And therefore, we really think that Cabinet is offering a really good service. We just wish that they didn't charge so much for it. So that's our review of Cabinet Health. Hope that helps.